Welcome also from my side. I'm really happy and pleased to see that what started a couple of years back in kind of ad hoc consultation with some of you around international dialogue on migration and development has now developed as a kind of institutionalized gathering with structures that are important and that will help us also address these questions of it's not the state alone, it's not the governments alone who are responsible for pushing forward these agendas. And let me start with a picture. That's my personal experience. When talking to some of you years back, it was always a challenge to find the right level of discussion. What are we talking about? Are we talking about new regulations and international law or global dialogue, or are we talking about the concerns of the home country where the challenges of survival are probably nearer? So to find this level is important. And I invite you to use also a picture. When we want to move forward, I once listened to a speech of Picard, the balloon driver. And he said, if you want to move forward in a balloon, you have to change altitude. And this is important. So on what level are we talking? If we stick to a level that is given by, I don't know, a setup, and we want to move forward and we got stuck, we can do nothing. It's blocked. So we have either go up, and that's the beauty of the picture, either go up, but we may also go down and find a place, an opportunity, and that's also a beauty. This opportunity is invisible in ballooning because you don't see the air that is moving. So let's use also for this conference, and also I would say also for the future dialogue, this picture of always be aware of what's the altitude we are on. Can we move forward, or do we have to change altitude? And I think what Thomas mentioned here is also a way of using another level of discussion to move forward this whole debate of migration and development. Because in a way, and especially here in Europe and also in Switzerland, we are kind of stuck in the debate. We're not moving really forward. So these are as introductory words. See? So I will rush a little bit through the presentation because most of the things, that the concerns and the different elements on migration and development have already been mentioned with probably a slightly different language, but it's the same messages. And that's the beauty also of it. So we have an international framework, the Agenda 2030, where migration and development are mentioned in this. This is a powerful framework. It's paper. It's agreed paper, which is important, but it's paper. So we have to give life to this paper. And now I change altitude. Let me see a kind of what's the ultimate goal of a migrant. And the migrant is kind of a migration is kind of an investment, not necessarily in the immediate benefit of the migration for the individual, but basically for its children and grandchildren. And this is an investment in sustainable development. Let me use another picture, and here also that's an element why we got so stuck in the debate, because most of the people, they see migrants as victims, with all the costs and that are linked with all the burdens and the tensions and the things, and they do not necessarily see the same people as competent people, as ambitious people, and with people with the potential, with ambitions and with workforce and so on. And this is the way we also have to look. Both these circles are interlinked. And of course, some of the migrants are also victims. Some are in very difficult situations and dangerous situations. But as Thomas also mentioned, most of them are in a situation where they pay taxes, they contribute to the country of origin and country of destination. So what is striking also in the presentation of Thomas was that this migration and development thing is complicated. So it's not easy to to get out key messages. And I was once forced by the former president, but the president of Caritas Schweiz, Hugo Fasel, who said to me after a presentation that I did on migration and development, he said, Markus, that's good. It's good, but it's complicated. People don't understand. So please come up with kind of a couple of key messages that people understand. Okay, I said, yeah, maybe it's okay, I'll try. And then I will come to that. We were kind of forced to reflect on what is the framework on the linkages between migration and development. And I came up with 4 principles. The first principle, not contested, is vulnerable people in need of protection need to be protected wherever they are. This is a given thing. We have the framework, that's the whole Geneva Convention and so on. It's still challenges linked with that, but this message is not contested. The second one is a trickier one, and it goes a little bit in the field, very much in the field what Thomas just mentioned. Sustainable development in a globalized economy requires flexible, safe, regular migration of labor forces. And this is then tackling and gives the possibility to tackle all these questions about agricultural, trade agreements, about the relationship between Switzerland in that case with developing countries. It cannot be that Swiss firms and enterprises are exploiting the African continent for the benefit for some private organizations. The third one is a kind of a message that is rooted in the profound experiences of development cooperation. There is no quick fix. The world is moving forward and is changing, not rapidly, but slowly over time. Things take time. Changing attitudes, changing values, and so on needs time. And we need a holistic approach to that. And this is what the fourth point is, what we have currently debated in New York and in other places. This is a kind of a global and national policy that needs a functioning governance structure. And that's the Global Compact on Safe and Regular Migration and the Global Compact on Refugees. Unfortunately, 2 compacts, but nevertheless, it will kind of create a good governance. Well, I'm not sure whether it will be good, but it will be a governance structure that we will have at hand, that we will use and further improve, I would say. So based on these 4 messages, you can then deduct all kinds of policies that the different countries may use, also according to their context, whether they are a country that more exporting labor migrants or whether they are a country that is faced with a lot of refugees. So these are then all the issues that you have on the right hand of the slide. But ultimately, what these principles are aiming at is policy coherence. Now, we all know policy coherence doesn't exist. It's always kind of an objective, a vision that we want to strive. But we kind of see that coherent migration policy, and that's basically what we want, needs to give answers to a couple of domains, basically integration, reintegration, return, the whole labor market and issues, the outreach to the diaspora for the different countries, the whole protection issues of vulnerable people, but also minorities and so on. And of course, these international and regional networks, relationships that where, for example, as mentioned by Thomas, this common concern approach would be an added value and a welcome added value. Also, then the whole aspects of governance that are important. Now, and I go not in all the details to these approaches, but these are some of the perspectives on migration that we need to consider. We need to see the potential in it. We need a holistic approach and policy coherence, of course, comprehensive approaches and so on. We need to include not only international migration, but we need also to include internal migration, a big taboo still in the whole international debate, because countries like China are faced with roughly the same amount of internal migrants in exactly the situations as the international migrants worldwide. So these are things that we need, and this is part of the complicated thing that we need to take into account. It's complex. It's also based on individual decisions, but also on triggering factors like conflicts or with climate change and so on. The main problem we face also is that migration is not cannot be just clearly separated in different groups. Most of the migration is taking place as mixed migration. Some come for sport competitions, some marry, some are refugees, some are economic, looking for jobs and so on. So some are musicians, cultural things. So there is a whole mix, and in some areas, in some of the hotspots, they found themselves with equal conditions, with an equal context. So this is the big challenge, how we tackle these mixed migration flows. And of course, it's not only the governments who have a responsibility. We all, as individuals, as part of the communities, as part of organizations, as civil society, as academics, we have a responsibility to push forward this framework that I mentioned before. Now, the current debate that we have in Switzerland, and I'm an optimist by profession, is we had this debate about conditionality. We had this parliament who wrote into our dispatch of international cooperation that we have to link international cooperation with domestic Swiss migration policy, which basically means that we have to consider the whole asylum and return issues in our development cooperation. Now, the 4 principles that I mentioned before were kind of triggered by this mandate, because we said, how we want to do this? I mean, it is a decision, and we have it. We have to fulfill this. This is a mandate. And the best we can do is build a necessary framework where we can do then these linkages. This linkage needs to be done within this framework. And so we put in all the papers that we sent up to the Federal Council, we put these 4 key messages into as a kind of a introduction to then define, yes, we do the linkages, but based on these 4 principles. And it has been agreed so far. Or, I must probably say, not contested, because people did not see yet the explosive character of these 4 principles. But that's why we have the project of the common concern, where probably we will progress on this matter. And of course, behind this conditionality is always the same questions of how to stop migration and how to increase return movements, which are the wrong questions. Let's face it. It's a pity that most of the governments are so much focused on these questions rather than looking at the big picture of migration. But nevertheless, we have this task, we have this kind of deal with this conditionality, and when implementing this mandate, we kind of have defined the 3 levels. On a political level, whenever there are policy dialogues, bilateral talks with governments, we have to give migration a room within with these agreements, and hopefully we will have additional partnerships, migration partnerships in that respect. We also have a geographical link, so wherever we work, we will consider migration. But the examples, for example, in Swiss cooperation, we see that the country strategies of Nepal and Bangladesh have now taken up migration as one of the 3 core areas of their strategy, of Swiss cooperation strategy in these countries. And they are not, for sure, taking asylum and return as their baseline, because about 6 asylum seekers from Nepal and the 2 asylum seekers from Bangladesh will not make the difference and will not make a difference. And of course, we need to have a thematic link. And here again, I make the linkages with what Thomas said. We need to be better in defining migration and other sectors, other aspects of society and of concerns of communities, and to basically contribute to make linkages with the economic sector, let's face, because economy is driving this world. And let me close with a couple of probably it's a little bit provocative, but it's rather fair to say migration is development, because migration is driving the world. Migration, if you want to move forward, people want to move forward, they basically do not stay at the same place. They move either to a town or either to other places and so on. They explore the world. They are ambitious and they basically change the world. So therefore, development is also migration, because if you stick to the mandate of development, you want to improve the situation. And so you want to change patterns. You want to change attitudes and views and adapt to new things, improve their livelihoods. So therefore, also you have to, so to speak, migrate in your mind, migrate in your head. So this is a kind of a conclusion that I make. And I thought how to finish this speech. And I said, I came up with my 4 S. All these things, moving forward, exploring the world, and so on, we need to base it, these things need to be safe, because we live in dangerous times on different levels, and we have to make the world safer. This is a kind of also on a bottom line. We need to make the world sustainable. We have the agenda, as mentioned before. Let's take this framework and let's stick to this task to strive for sustainability. And the last one, I struggled a long time until I said, okay, slow. As I said, there are no quick fixes. So we have to also be able to wait until the right time. Or, as I said in the beginning, to change altitude to move forward. So see, this needs a little bit other competences as just we stick to the mandate, we stick to what we have agreed upon, and then go forward until we are right into the wall. And last sentence is, when talking about migration and development, 2 concepts are also conflicting, in so to speak. The one of innovation, of making things new, and the other is tradition, of sticking to values and sticking also to the power of communities, of local people, of local knowledge, and we have to find the right balance between the 2. Thank you.